with us. I'm too busy myself. Yeah, looks good. I like it higher. It'll hide our old guts and chins. I'm getting them, Mr. Welch. I'm getting the undershin here.
Oh yeah, well,
I'm going through that crisis. Me and my best friend, we're like, "What is this? Why isn't this going right?"
one of my grandchildren said something to me one time. How come your face just goes straight down?
when they're young,
Yeah.
right? They'll say
anything.
they'll say whatever. They'll be so honest. What's going on, guys? We are live with Mr. Welch, the planning principle. Planning principle. We can start off with that term. What the heck does planning principle mean? And we're going to get into that. But first, for those of you wondering, who is this ridiculously good-looking gentleman next to me here? We ran into each other at Parkinson's walk as well. But for those who may not know, we can look in here, Mr. Rose. Is still recording.
Okay.
This will go. That baby's going to go in and out. Who exactly are you, sir? Maybe a quick update, quick brief about yourself. I really hate that question because there's so many things you can say. But why don't we start? Maybe the timeline at the beginning, Mr. Welch. So currently, you're president of the Silicon Valley Educational Foundation. No. Okay, correct me.
I work there sometimes.
Okay. Oh, director of operations.
Yeah.
See,
sometimes.
I did some homework.
Yeah.
Okay, and many hats. I think 35 years in the Bay and educating. You were a principal at one point in Santa Teresa, correct? How would you define yourself, sir, to Joe Schmo, who's just seen you for the first time?
Well, I guess I'm an educator. I'm an educator, a citizen of Silicon Valley. Grew up here, went to San Jose State. So this is my place.
Yes, sir, and we appreciate that. I got some really cool questions for you guys. And look at my first guest to bring an awesome diagram. We'll get to that as well. So we know what you're doing now, Mr. Welch. If we could just, before we get into the education value for you guys, if you could briefly just, I always love giving the story, the timeline. Originally from here?
I grew up in Redwood City, went to Sequoia High School.
Sequoia. They were our rivals in the second round of CCS one year. Good school in Redwood City. And then tell me a little bit about the story, Mr. Welch, the journey from Sequoia and thinking way back. So Sequoia's done, high school's done. What year? What graduating class?
Oh, I have to tell you that too? 1958.
So his 21st birthday will be next year. So, I think this is important because a lot of, kids out there trying to, figure out the journey and figure out exactly what they want to do. And I was always told, ask those coming back. Mr. Yeager. Ken, how are you? Our Santa Clara County Supervisor, Ken Yeager. No, he just jumped on Facebook Live, Mr. Welch here. But guys, we're recording on a laptop here. Sorry if it's choppy over there. We're doing our best. Jane, how are you? If you ever hear me cut anything off, it's because people are jumping on the Facebook Live. So I'll say their names. But we just left off with Mr. Welch. He was giving some background. He graduated from Sequoia. We won't say what year if you missed that. And I was talking about ask those coming back. If you want to figure out your career, you want to figure out your journey, ask people with experience who've kind of, been through life and so forth. So when you're at the undergrad stage, Mr. Welch, what did you pick up? Because we all don't know what the heck we're going to do at that point, right?
Yeah. When I was an undergrad, I just went to school and figured somehow this is all going to work out. And, I didn't have it clearly in mind. When I graduate, I'll apply for a job and I'll get a job and I'll have a career. I learned a lot about that since then. But that's where I started. Just did what everybody did.
Right. And did you switch majors at all? Or what did you kind of...
Nope.
Start with, okay.
No.
And then what was what school did you decide?
San Jose State.
Oh, yeah, that's right, San Jose State.
Yeah.
And grad school. Okay. And did you stay through San Jose State for that as well?
Yeah.
And then that takes me into urban leadership, which
Yeah.
I found very interesting. Was that an existing program already? How did that all come up?
That's interesting. Let's see. I was the principal at Santa Teresa High School and an area director when that started. And some people who I knew at San Jose State, Dr. Marcia Speck and Dr. Marty Feldman, they envisioned this program to train. There weren't enough school administrators, and many of the programs for school administrators weren't really strong programs. They read books about what Dewey said in the
But no feeder
1930s.
programs.
No feeder programs, no sort of integrated, no looking at what does education look like in the 21st century, and not. It was in a university, not in a school. And so the Urban High School Leadership Program, I was in the East Side then, so we were a prime target, and I knew these folks, so they asked me to join them as a way of bringing East Side teachers who were interested in becoming educational leaders into the program. So we did that, and so what happened is we would meet, not even at the university, which is not always a welcoming place to go, but someplace that was easy to park, and not during the day when people were working, and then the action would mostly happen in their schools when they would take on projects and work together to get
so such a powerful program, because you're really shaping our minds. I love the idea, but how the heck do you come up with a curriculum? That was probably the next question.
Sure.
Right? And then what is that versus standard? So if you finish urban leadership program, would that give you your credentials?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And a master's degree.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, Chris Funk, the superintendent of Eastside Union High School District, was a student in that program.
Many were, right?
Yeah.
So that obviously thought that was a great idea. Were all the credentials the same? You're immediately fit to be at the minimum level of principal or a teacher?
No,
seniority will work your way up from there.
Well, you know how it works. The credential enables you to be a school administrator, which is a particular job. You could still be a teacher. You don't have to do that.
Right.
And we had people who just came because they wanted to learn. I can think of one right now, a lady, great, wonderful person who just wanted to learn more about educational leadership. And then she went back to the classroom, but later she went on and became a school principal.
I can see that, because you're always a teacher at heart. I'm sure when you have to do the administrative role, you start to miss the classroom, right? And you got to tread that line I've talked to Mrs. Kelly about, is how to be a good bad cop, and then how to decide who's good cop, bad cop. And then obviously you have assistant principals upon principals, and somebody is always designated as the disciplinary, but at the same time it's so needed, the same way we need police officers and laws, or to be chaos, right? How do we, and we're molding our youth, a very diverse youth that's positive things could be going on at home, or negative things, and just trying to help them be better human beings, right, is the overall goal with that. So when urban leadership at SJSU is done, is that with the principal streak started with you at Santa Teresa, or did you teach a little bit?
After that, I was I had a management job at Independence High School of the state and federal programs.
We were just talking about that, yeah.
And then I became an assistant principal there at Independence High School, nice. and then principal at Santa Teresa.
Was it 76 for the 76ers at that time?
Yeah.
It was. Okay. Right. I guess that
76 is when the school opened.
Oh, okay, got it.
Right.
So that's when I ended up choosing that. And Whirlwind, I don't know how far ahead this is. This is probably right before Evergreen, but you all of a sudden do a Whirlwind and help Mr. Joe Cotto out, who runs for state assembly, wins, and you go from being an educator to, what the heck is a legislative director, for those who don't know? Wow. And I answer these questions in like layman's terms in case the listener has no idea as well. We have to assume that.
So I actually left the district at the same time Mr. Cotto did. When Mr. Cotto retired, he ran.
He was a superintendent.
He was a superintendent. He ran for the assembly in this area, and I worked on his campaign. He said, I had been a principal for him. He said, "What are you doing?" Because I had just retired. And I said, "What do you want me to do?" And he said, "Help me." So we worked on the campaign. He won. I went to Sacramento with it. It was very tricky. I had a family. Sacramento is 125 miles away, but we made it work. And then, our agenda was about education, and it was a very humbling experience that getting meaningful things done in Sacramento is very hard. The more important it is, the bigger the pushback from somebody seemed to be. And so we would have, maybe 15 or 20 bills a year, and a dozen of them would be about education. And we didn't change the world.
Right. But somebody has to try, right? You have to do that. Because I feel like in that world, obviously a whole different universe. But it was interesting that, of like Osh, for example, he's been on this show of D27. We have several, I want to say 5, or I could be wrong, don't quote me, 6 state assemblymen. But your guys' task was specifically education. Was that because of Mr. Cotto's background?
Yeah.
That was specifically why he wanted.
But it wasn't just education, but primarily that was our focus. And that's what the legislative director does.
Right, that's what I was asking you. What's your day-to-day?
Right. So, in the summer, before the summer even, we would talk, the whole team, there's a team of us, talk about what we're interested in next year, what worked and didn't work last year, where we ought to go, and we would come up with some ideas. And then the legislative director takes those ideas to the next level and writes them up, and then finally you decide, okay, this is the package of bills we're going to carry this year, and then
then we present it. Then does it go to educator?
Then it goes to the legislative council who writes it in educationalese,
legal
and then
terms.
It goes through the process of the committees, and then to the floor, and then we were in the assembly. Then we'll go to the other house, and then the job of the legislative director, in part, is to follow that. And when there's a hearing, you've got to get the people to testify, and you have to make sure you're clear. When somebody's upset about the bill, they're not clear about it, or they're not sure they like it.
Somebody's going to say something when it comes out of budget. Right.
Then they come in, they want to sit down and talk, and then if you can find a way to, gee, I never thought of that, maybe we could tweak it a little bit, and then you can amend the bill to try to make it everybody happy, which happens seldom.
Right. So the seed of the plant you just described in that initial conference room is essentially brainstorming with that team of what you feel will be relevant or what's needed for our youth. And that was perfect. That tied into my next question. I was going to ask you, what do you feel that we need to see the most? Obviously, those are 2 different time periods, 2017 and now. How does one brainstorm and just say, I got it, we need this? There's so much to be done, right? So how do you, for somebody out there might be listening who might be sitting in the same seat, right? How do you prioritize? Obviously, you got help and things that are going on and budgetary issues. How does one... it's great. Regardless, you're making positive change, You obviously have to have a brainstorming session. You have to say, let's come up with 5 ideas that really benefit our youth. What is priority, though, given this?
Right. And
at the same time, look at a realistic budget. What are they not going to throw out the door?
Exactly.
Right? Was that essentially the mind? What year was this, for example? This was...
the election was in 2004, so he was in office... Actually, the beginning of 2005 until 2010. That's 3 2-year terms he was there.
Right. So this is 2000. Okay, got it. And then Evergreen started in 2002.
Yeah.
Were you kind of simultaneously?
No.
Oh, he was finished.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I left the district in the fall of 2003, and he started his campaign about then. They went together. Got it.
Very interesting. I think it's cool. I mean, if there's any place you can make serious impact, it's at that level, because the buck stops there, to say, or obviously that's where the most debate's going on, but
it isn't.
Politics and education are a great subject to combine.
Right. In the inertia of the system, it wants to keep doing what it's always done. For example, you ask about how you decide. Well, there's some big issues that people in education think about, or at least our team thought about. For
Mm.
example, how schools are funded. It's a crazy, it's better now, but it's a
Mm.
crazy way. It doesn't make any sense, but it's been done that way for a long time, and then people tack a little of this and a little of that on it, and so it's really a system that didn't work. So let's go see if we can make sense of how schools are funded. And so we tried that 3 times.
That was a great question.
We failed each time.
It's easy to make a simple thing complicated. It's actually very, very difficult to make a complicated thing just simple, right?
Yep.
And I guess in that environment, it's natural to, we won't get into it, to just debate back, because it's somebody saying it instead of thinking of, this is for the kids, you know?
Right.
But kudos to you for jumping in that pit of lava and trying, right? And Mr. Cotto was a great man to be on a team with. I'm sure the experience was invaluable. My next question was, what would you like to see? 2003, and this is just your personal opinion. You can't do anything as much now, but what would you, before I get into Finland, Mr. Welch, what would you like to see done in our education in 2017? There's obviously millions of things we need. When we're thinking K to 12. What would you like to see more of? You know, perfect world, you had it your way.
Yep. You know, it reminds me of Evergreen Valley High School. That was a few years ago, but the idea there was, you know, it's a new millennium. It's a new high school. We haven't had any new high schools here. People say high schools don't work very well. So what would a high school look like that worked well in the 21st century? And so here's a golden opportunity. Let's create one. What does the literature say? What's missing? What should we be doing? And so, you know, there are a lot of things you could focus on, but the use of technology in education, which was just happening at that time, that education would be focused on students learning rather than teachers teaching. You know, the student-centered classroom, for example, that learning would be sort of interdisciplinary like life is. You know, you don't get up in the morning and do all your English things from 8 to 9 and then do all your math things from 9 to 10. Right. You use all those tools to solve problems in the real world. So focus students on solving problems, not memorizing data. So all those things are
getting them prepared for the real world stuff.
Right.
And Roman Nahal would appreciate what you just said, and it makes a whole lot of sense. And in the moment, right, we're always adverse to change. Why is there a humanities? Why? We might as well get into that. I'm excited to get into it. We were so lucky to be a part of that process. I was a part of the first graduating class. For those of you guys who know, we're talking about Evergreen Valley High School, which is one of the first East Side Union that was built in 25 years, right? Since independence, I guess.
That's right.
And I'm sure there's always going to be critics, right? But there was obviously a huge method to your madness, which is so cool to have this talk of why there was, at that time, it was unusual to be so specific of, we had information technology, kind of school within the school with its own principle. We had humanities, if you wanted to focus on that. There was 2 others. I can't remember off the top of my head either. I don't expect you to.
Science and technology. Human performance.
Human performance. I was in human performance. I don't remember.
Which is about sort of biology and psychology, you know, what makes humans tick.
It would encompass this package, and of course, parents are great. There's some always irate parents. I'm telling you, teachers are so patient, and being a coach kind of taught me too, holding tryouts. You got parents coming at you and all that stuff. So you can't always please them, but I think getting a chance to explain that bigger picture will actually make them go, wow, that was actually genius at the time. I think if there's another school, they should continue to kind of take that path. So I'm glad I asked that question. Before we get into the meat of bones of Evergreen, most of my questions, I just wanted to talk out and just, debate is not even the right word, just talk out about Finland, just to kind of brush those up on it. And they're at the end. Down there, kind of with these rankings with the American system, they shoot up to the top. And the question is, why? And according to them, they did a few things. They eliminated homework. They increased recess time. The last one will come to me. They increased recess time. They shortened the schedule. They started later. they started later because the kids are half asleep, right? In those times. And that is great. Now, what spectrum? Because we got K all the way to 12. I mean, this is completely different factors. Or you just general thoughts? Because I think there's obviously pros and cons of that. And America is not Finland, right?
Right.
Much larger execution for something like that. But when we see countries doing things that are working for them, do you feel that it's something that we should be more open-minded to trying, or what are your general thoughts on that?
Well, it's kind of back to that old inertia thing. We go, it's not just Finland,
we
it's
hate
lots
change.
of places. We go to Japan, we go to India, we go to Finland, and we find out things and we say, they got, and then we come back and we maybe try it for a little bit, but we don't shift. We just kind of keep on working. Another thing about Finland is they pay teachers really well, and they have high expectations of teachers, and teachers are well trained in those schools. It's more of a homogeneous society than ours too. That it's not that there aren't other people in Finland, but most of the people are Finns. Mm-hmm. And so we have a country where people speak many languages, come from many cultures.
Great point.
And so we
have to answer
make
to that.
It work. You bet.
We have to answer to that. There's got to be certain bilingual classes, right? Where that's not the right word. Where English is not a first language.
Right.
Totally necessary. So that is what I mean by it's a much larger animal.
Right.
And then when parents start getting on that I want my kid to have more homework,
yes.
Some teachers, superintendents, they fall to that pressure of pleasing them instead of trying to explain the bigger picture, because sometimes explaining the bigger picture means they're out of their seat. And which is good too. I mean, it's for the people, by the people, and so forth. And so that's, I always try to, before jumping to that, okay, cool, yeah, excellent documentary, we should just do that. I try to see both sides, because parents are, working so hard, 9 to 5 stuck. They're happy that Jimmy joined baseball because they get a little more time. If school ended earlier and they got to pick him up, that's daycare, right? That's a huge problem for them. So not an easy job for you guys. Weird question that you probably can't answer, Mr. Bell. Why aren't our teachers and educators put payroll wise a little higher? I mean, that's not a question for you. That's a question for the people in power. But has it always been that way?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean,
there's so many teachers out there listening going, yes.
There are pockets here and there, but, we have never been a place, back in the 1800s, the school marm, was a job for a girl who hasn't gotten married yet, and it wasn't serious business.
Right.
And it's serious business now. And so, but money is always scarce. No, we're a rich country, but there's always more things to do, more things to spend the money on than there is money. And as I remember when we were in Sacramento, Arnold Schwarzenegger said, "We give them $50 billion. Wouldn't you think that'd be enough?" And it wasn't enough.
Right.
Seemed like a lot of money.
Yeah. Because that was for the entire. We're a huge state, though.
Yes.
So no, Arnold, and you got technology advancing and so forth. But since then, I've seen things kind of being answered to that, which is great. I know Leva and Quimby kind of putting together a initiative. At first, I believe they called it Bulldog Tech, and then now it's LSI building at Quimby Oak. For those parents listening, they're working on something. I went over to my neighbor's house the other day, and his backyard is Quimby Oak, and at the same time, you're not going to make everybody happy. They're building a Quimby Tech, kind of like Bulldog Tech, but it's being erected in the parking lot, so his view's completely gone. He's got a huge building there. Which I don't know what to say to him, but at the same time, it's obviously for a great, cause, the technology building. So that's something that obviously has to be answered as well. But at the end of the day, all these future people who become significant leaders who do great things, they come from this root of the system, right? So it's how it's not at somewhat of a priority is pretty insane to me, where we look at that. But now we got these big entrepreneurs who's saying school is not completely needed and this and that. I think absolutely the K to 12 level, that's not even debatable. I mean, just to generally get the mind going, right? You can argue university all you want. I mean, we got to admit, Mr. Welch, the student loan thing is I feel like we're seeing it more in my generation and age. I'm not sure how it was for you. Did you have to take college loan to go to San Jose State at that
I
time?
did, but whoa, it was much less.
Inflation,
It's nothing like what people today deal with.
APR,
Yeah,
yeah, and then banks get
yeah.
involved. Apparently, it's one of the only things that you can't declare bankruptcy on, even if you wanted to with student loans. You have to pay them back. So, Obama did some type of loan forgiveness, right? I'm totally uneducated on this.
Yeah, they modified it. I'm not sure of the details either, but they modified it. But I think we're losing that
Mm.
now. But if community college is free, there's a
First year
step.
is
Yeah,
just happened, right?
yeah, yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, first year, actually, I remember I fact checked it because somebody kept asking me. It was October of this year that it was enacted that the first year of JC is now free in California. I don't know why not both, but it's a start with first year. I think the entire state of New York, if you're a resident, is free, and then Tennessee, if you're a resident, is free just for JC. New York, we're talking anything,
Right.
and which is a pretty cool
Yeah.
step, right, in the right direction. Hopefully, we start to see more than that because it's hard enough. I mean, some people, right, are not as well off as others, and you're starting from ground zero. But to start from ground zero with a boulder on your shoulders up a
Right.
hill,
Right.
that's who knows
And
where that's going to take the future. Right?
and we're falling behind. You look just in this week in the Mercury News was an article about students graduating from high school, and it's around college. I mean, and it's around 30% of high school graduates, which doesn't fill the jobs we have in our society that require a college degree. And each year we lose a little bit more. And so, I've heard that argument about, well, look at all the great people there are in the United States, so our school system must be working. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is Silicon Valley. I hear people say, why can't you educate people who can function effectively in our corporations? Why do we have to do it over when they get there? And that
Right.
has to do with communicating well, working well in teams, working as problem solvers, the things that don't always happen in a
The levels of bureaucracy. This is why I wanted to have Mr. Welch on. We haven't even went through one question, and we've given so much value. But no, you nailed it on that. And I read an article from Elon, and he had that type of thing. Was we have to admit there are levels of bureaucracy within the workforce, and he says you don't have to ask your personal manager for permission to go up to another cross department manager to ask him if you need to get something done. In other words, your hiring manager should not get angry at you, say, why did you go there and ask him for something without my permission, right? We know that's there in the 9 to 5 world, right? So he says, no, none of that. That really messes up efficiency. If you need to get something done, you're more than welcome to go to the other department's hiring manager and ask him if it's okay. Just ask him if it's okay. Maybe he might say no. You're an idiot. Go back and talk to your manager. But examples like that really speed up efficiency. And you're right. That is a part of it too. Is how we, how we actually work with each other and throughout. We kind of have what we think is the way a corporation functions, right? But
right.
it's up to you, and that's why we see more startups and they're more aggressive mentality. But awesome stuff. So. Now let's narrow in and jump in a time machine. And I come to you. First off, so there's high school principal, superintendent, area director. We know kind of. We'll get to superintendent. We know what a principal is. What is the difference? What is an area director? Yeah.
So the idea of the area director in this district was to get groups of schools together, working together, sort of in proximity, geographic proximity, and come up with a plan working together to make education work better for kids, to improve their attendance, to improve their performance? How can we work together, because the district was pretty big, to do that? And
Meaning
so that,
you communicating with all the principals.
yeah, and all the teachers. Like, we would have staff development experiences together. We would pick one another's brains. We would have departmental meetings, like the math departments from 4 schools sitting down together, which is doable. How can we do this together? What are you folks doing that we could be doing? That kind of thing. That was the idea.
Still prevalent today?
What?
Still prevalent today?
No. So pretty much it didn't work.
Really?
We worked and we solved problems and we helped people out.
That sounds great.
But the whole idea of making student learning, taking it to a higher level, that didn't work. So after about 3 years, they said, this
would go on during those staff development type days. Right?
Yeah, well, every day.
But on a district level,
Yeah.
where they still happen now inside of Evergreen, this was more, hey, tell me about your side of town.
Right.
What you're seeing.
Right. They just don't have area directors anymore. So you had the idea of, there's the principal, there's the superintendent, and at the district office there are a few assistant superintendents, for personnel or
Right. Who would be in charge of that? Would it be superintendent with somebody above him?
No,
Or would it be
above him is the board of trustees.
The board of trustees.
Right.
Okay.
They're his boss.
And they would be making these type of decisions, the area director, or
No, there's no area director. There was for a short period of time.
Right, and then we decided not to. Who
Right.
decided to cut that type of thing? Is it
The superintendent and the board.
Got it. I'll leave it at that.
Right.
But maybe there's a method to their madness on keeping it within the schools. I mean, it is tough enough having the math teachers at just X school communicate with each other the way you just described,
Right.
and so forth. But it never hurts to, within a region, within a district, talk to each other. But
there's constantly that question about how can we get better?
Right.
How can we get better in math?
Mr. Funk, you're next on the show. He's already committed, so you better believe I'm going to ask that.
How can
I won't drop any names.
How can we learn from one another?
Right.
That's what we're supposed to do. And
That's
so
what it's about.
finding how that happens, and you talked about the Evergreen School District. So, East Side has 7 feeder districts. So communicating with that, so the 8th grade or the middle school people are synced up with the high school, so they're preparing their students for what the high school teachers expect. It's amazing, but sometimes that doesn't happen.
Right.
So
They're
we're
not
preparing
aligned.
them for something that we're expecting.
How do we align them?
Yeah, we have to talk.
And by 7 feeder, you mean Evergreen Elementary School District, et cetera, et cetera, et
Elm
cetera.
Rock, Oak
Elm Rock.
Grove,
Yeah.
Franklin, McKinley.
And you line up those puzzle pieces, it'll be far more efficient.
Right.
Right.
And it's hard to do.
It sounds very complex. So if there's a way to sink it in, it sounds like a lot of. It doesn't have to. There's got to be a way, but at least you guys attempted that, right?
There's an organization now called East Side Alliance, and its whole purpose is to do that, is to build this K to 12, actually K to 16, including San Jose State, which is part of it, about how can we work together to make it work better for everybody. And they're working hard, and still hard.
Right. And that doesn't mean that K through 16 means we're going to be able to have one way and the only way. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, but just having communication in line, probably more efficient for learning curricula, right? A very cool idea, and I think those type of things should be brainstormed more. I don't even think we ever reach that level of organizational thinking until you get to your level and the superintendent and so forth. But very cool ideas, and you never know who's listening out there. It could be a superintendent from Detroit who says, you know what, I got to bring that up. We're going to try that. That's why I think this stuff is so important. So now the animal, my lovely bias as a cougar, as a first graduating class, and being a part of that, taking advantage of being a guinea pig during trying different bell schedules and that whole experience. I show up and I say, Mike Welch, we haven't had a high school in 25 years. I want you to be in charge of the team that starts that. Where the heck do you start? And I'm talking, let's get nitty gritty. Do you meet up with, are you involved in architecture all the way? Where did you start? I mean, what was your honest?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
So architecture, there was before I took the job as planning principal, there was already a plan for the school, an architectural plan. Now,
Meaning the site was chosen.
and the plans were drawn. Now, having the plans drawn and having the building built are two different things. So
execution. The idea means nothing. Execution is the game, right?
Yeah. So, and just as it happens in your house every day, something goes wrong on the site every day, and you have to go down and figure out what went wrong. And there's the architect, and there's the builder, and then there's the school district, which in that that time was me. Right. And so,
how do you adapt?
What's the problem? What do we need to do? So there was a whole lot of that. And then there's a curriculum in the East Side Union High School district already for the school, so you didn't have to create a curriculum. So it was there, and then there's standards that the state had, what they expect students to know and be able to do, and that was there. So
and then actually have facility-wise locker rooms for PE, every detail.
And part of my job, I hadn't thought of it before, but furniture. In a school, in a high school, 250,000 square feet. There are
right. No, keep going. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Down?
Oh, I just wanted to show this. It is upside down, but I wanted to show this area first. What I could do is I'll take a picture and I'll add it to this video later. But continue on. You were saying in a school.
So there are all these.
Thank you to Janet. She grabbed this from the old garage and brought of Evergreen. I'll take pictures later and throw it in the video and everything. Sorry, carry on.
Sure. So desks. Well, what kind of desks? Well, what should a desk look like in a 21st century school? Well, what did the old-fashioned, on and on. Bike racks. Well, what do the bike racks look like? Well, safety. What about signage?
How do we answer that and stay in budget?
Right. And then science. I'm not a science person, so what it's like in a science classroom. But there is, chemistry and physics and biology and physiology, and they all have different needs. And so, oh my gosh, we got to figure out equipping all these science rooms. So that went on for 2 years. Then there's getting the students enrolled. A new school, it's not automatic, and you have to get a number from the state.
Did you pull it back to science? How did you answer that question? Did you bring in consultants?
This is what we did.
Right.
I had been the principal at Santa Teresa, and there was a great science department chair there, Gary Melching. And so I said, so Gary, what if we found some money and you got 2 or 3 of your colleagues and you had some time and you went through this and you created a plan to equip the science labs.
That's so cool.
And he said, whoa, that's a big job. And I said, well, I certainly can't do it.
And that's why they chose you, because then you had already built this network.
Right.
Being here so long.
And so he did get his, there were other department chairs, different people, and they came back and they said, well, what about this? And we'd have a discussion. And finally,
what was his name one more time?
Gary Melching.
Thank you, Gary. You're really listening
he was great.
The thing is, nobody takes credit, but he knows in his mind. He walks in and he goes, same way I think about the colors of mascot. We'll get to that. Nobody's going to believe me, but I was a part of this, And it sounds kind of lame, but it's such a cool thing when you see it, and carry on. I shouldn't have cut you off. And then it was on to the next thing.
Enrolling all the students, hiring the teachers. You talked about that before, about the great teachers that were there. And really the way we did it is, I talked a little bit before about the vision was this was going to be a different kind of school. This was going to be a 21st century school. So we put that out there. We said, it's about 100 kids working in a interdisciplinary way with 4 teachers who work together. So
what that screams to them, though? We're open to change.
Yes.
Which for some of them who've probably been there 20 years plus, they're like a breath of fresh air.
Right.
I want to be a part of that.
Right. Well, some did and some didn't.
Right. But at least my opinions aren't going to be completely blocked, but it seems like they're going to need our help.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's actually, that'll attract more people.
Right.
That builds exactly why area director type thing we talked about.
Well, that's how we staffed the school. We said, this is the plan. If you want to be part of it, apply. And so people applied.
How was the demand? Was it huge?
I want to do that. Well, it was more than we had places.
And you needed, yeah. Which was the question you wanted to answer at that time. So you got a no local athletics, but this is the man that stacked them up. Well, obviously he's looking at resumes at this point, but then we have a meeting. You probably don't even remember this, Mr. Welch. but it was at Quimby Oak Middle School's gym. But I'm at the level where I finished my freshman year already at Mount Pleasant. But now we did portables first. Half were in Silver Creek. See, I remember half was in Mount Pleasant. But when it came to that athletics, you're a sophomore, you're self-conscious, you're nervous. But this is a new beginning for you too to join athletics. You walk in, and Mr. Welch had them all lined up. And what I didn't know at the time is these were legendary coaches. Like in everyone, we had Coach Quinnett, who had Piedmont Hills named after him. But what better man in the big picture of things to take on a job like that? And then you had Dennis Fernandez, who absolutely changed my life. Don't get me started on what he did for me. He just got the job out of retirement for the freshmen and sophomores back at Evergreen.
Great.
Now, I don't know. He didn't even tell me. He told me to show up. I thought he was going to be for Andrew Hill. And now we'll get to that later. But my schedule is finally flexible, so I might start helping him out there. And I know he can bring a state title to Evergreen, But and then so on and so forth. As far as the women's divisions, you guys just pick the best of the best. And at the time, I didn't even notice that. But I mean, well, the question I was going to ask you is, how did you do that? But now I realize you're just doing your job. You're just reading resumes and.
Right. And it wasn't just me. There was a team of us.
Okay, tell me about that.
Parents, other teachers, other administrators were part of a team, and so you get the resumes.
Was that the pro code to get parents involved? I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Did they do that with Independence when they were building that?
I don't know.
See, it takes a leader to just go, no, I think that's important. Let's do it, right? Because sometimes when there's not a handbook, you don't have to just double check. Is you just want to get the job done and get it done right. And that's so cool to me. So that's why I got some type of phone call where I'm literally across the street from Evergreen, 7th and 8th grade, and then we move away right when it opens further back. But I'm not sure how they got a hold of me, but I know the people to this day that are probably on here too. It was Amy Chu, a few kids a year younger than me, including me and others, and we meet at the fire department, and what committee did we call it?
School site council.
School site council, and we met I think in Quimby's library once or twice, but we met at the fire department, and I don't want to say it locked us in a room, but it was a few hours, and we just debated out and narrowed down colors, and then we narrowed down
the name of the school even.
Yes, the name of the school, and then the last one was mascots, and I think I feel like it was very early on. It wasn't even built yet. I want to say 9th or 8th grader or 10th grader. It was my first taste of kind of open, not debate, nice kind of politics. My parents didn't even know I went to that meeting, but just for fun. It was nice energy, open debate. I remember we narrowed it down for the record, and I think Ryan Brennan, Ms. Chu, all them, Natalie, who was in there with me, I think it came down to, we had two different sets of colors, and then on mascots, we had Titans. Mr. Welch left the room. He just said, all right, you guys figure it out. Titans, and the colors came from the Sharks. And it was Titans, and then we narrowed it down to Cougars or Mountain Lions because they're indigenous to the area, the same way Lobo essentially means wolf, right? Or was it Coyote, one of those two?
Wolf.
Wolf, yeah. And that's really where it came about. I was pushing for Titans, didn't get my way. It's all right.
I was pushing for Owls.
Okay, yeah, that was the
They're
third
wise.
Yes. But the colors we all agreed upon. I remember it's the only thing I brought up were along the lines of the Sharks. They kind of meshed from the Carolina Panthers to Sharks. But that was so cool. And it wasn't just me. It was a lot of us. There's a lot of us there. And so that was just one way. We didn't even know Mr. Welch was organizationally delegating all the responsibilities he had ahead of him, right? So very interesting. Okay, be honest. You cannot be a leader and make these crucial decisions without getting backlash. What did Aristotle say? The only way to avoid criticism is do nothing, say nothing, be nothing.
Right.
It's such a huge task to get on that, and there's always the naysayers who will state problems without offering solutions. And then you're just complaining when you're doing that. Was that tough for you? Or was it pretty smooth and easy?
In fact, I think my charge was to bring, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 names for the school, mascots, colors to the board, and the board ultimately decided. But they took all of the recommendations of the school site council.
Yeah.
And in answer to your question, I think not all, some leaders would just make those decisions on their own. But if you go to the board and you say, we want to name the school Evergreen Valley High School, and somebody says, well, I think that's a dumb idea. And you said, well, we spent the last 4 months talking about this, and we included students and teachers and parents and people from the community, and we had a process, and this is what those folks came up with. Well, then somebody will say, well, maybe you're right. Maybe that's a good idea.
So it was pretty much you saved all that debating by making it about the kids who are actually going to use it, which it's probably saved you a lot of
their
work.
School.
Right. Which in fact would have delayed the whole process and nothing gets done. That was wise on your part to say a smart person can find a way to avoid the conflict early and still get it done, right? It takes a much more diplomatic, wise person to to avoid those type of unnecessary arguments instead of somebody who's just great at arguing, right? So that's very cool. And I'm glad we had this. So that's I know what an area director is now. In general, anything else encompass superintendent as far as responsibilities besides the general overseeing of principals and so forth? Because there's assistant superintendents. Is there any core group? I guess I don't want to say outside the area of administration, but as far as curriculum goes, I know you yourself were not a superintendent. Something I'll ask Mr. Funk too, but just off the top of your head, what is their typical core day to day as far as responsibilities, just on a general level?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
A superintendent,
yeah.
What is his core function within the education system?
Well, the superintendent's job is to manage it all. And so, sort of like the president and the president's cabinet. Then the assistant superintendents manage parts of it, and then they bring their recommendations
alongside the board of trustees.
Right. So then the superintendent meets in his cabinet, which is those people together regularly, and they talk about the important issues. For example, building Evergreen Valley High School is something that sort of happens in the business office because it's a business issue, and then there's a director of facilities, and on a day-to-day basis, he's the person who lets the contracts, who deals with the contractors, who brings up the issues. And so, but the superintendent is the boss. So if they're in the building, they're saying, look, we found out,
somebody's got to make a decision.
The final decision. Well, the final decision is actually all the board, but then they would come to the superintendent, and the superintendent would come with a recommendation to the board, and they would take it or not take it.
Michelle, when you look at something like the California high school exit exam, when they finally got rid of it now, when it came about, or when they did finally get rid of it, is that at the Joe Cotto State Assembly education level that we were talking about, or is that something that obviously they're going to want the feedback from superintendents from all around California? Who gets rid of? How did it?
That's about politics, right?
Right.
And so politics is in
those are important decisions
in school district, but it happened. There's a state Department of Education,
right?
And so it's a big bureaucracy in Sacramento, and in the legislature there's a Senate and an Assembly Education Committee, and depending on which way the wind is blowing,
I think you nailed it there. Actually, there's a specific education committee as well on the state level,
right?
So they would have to quarrel that out, the verbal quarrels to get rid of it. I'm glad. I don't know.
The thinking.
These are just your personal opinions. We glad they got rid of it, or you think that's needed, or?
Well, this is what I think. I think that the people of California expect some accountability. When they say, "How is it going?" They want to hear more than "we're doing the best we can." Show us some data.
They want to measure it,
right? And so then we've kind of learned that one measure isn't really adequate, to measure much of anything. It's certainly nothing as complicated as the student's education. So we need to have multiple measures. And so then the more you get, a lot of the public just just tell me, is it working or not working? Just show me the numbers. And so, well, you say, well, it's
Give me a quick solution.
It's complicated.
Right.
And so then I think we're moving now more toward the multiple measures thing. And so something like the exit exam or that kind of exam would be one issue. So what are the other issues? You know, how many people are graduating? How many people are going to college? How many people are taking AP courses?
SAT.
Yes, yes.
Which they went, right after I left, they went from 1,600 being perfect score to 22 something. And I just doing my research preparing for the Evergreen interview, they dropped it back down again in the past 2-3 years. I don't know if you're aware, Mr. Welch. Not that that matters. The 22 kind of, it's hard enough passing the damn thing, but that's another gauge. But that gauge is more for colleges and for entry level and stuff like that. Interesting if they would just be able to have access to that data. I'm not sure what happened since, but somebody convinced them to drop that measurement. And interesting how that falls into, I mean, I won't open that can of worms, but I always wondered how often when it comes to real estate, the values of areas are measured by the number one concern of parents are how are the schools?
Of course,
the attribute of, and I think that's where it really starts to get weird for politics too, because the better or lower exam scores immediately devalues the area. I mean, how is that? We shouldn't even open that camera. How is that a criteria? It's only one criteria of many: crime, all those type of things, but. It's obviously considered, right? Just because parents care where their kids get their education.
Absolutely.
That leads me to another one. Where do you see the future of private versus public? Because the number one complaint, I think, personal bias again, Quimby Oak and Shibuya are one of, my opinion, one of the greatest feeder middle schools when it comes to athletes. But the coach's number one concerns is anytime the kid's any good when he comes out of middle school, he's going to immediately go West Catholic Athletic League. And I can't begin to tell you how many stars have come from Shibuya, Quimby, but never made it to a public school. As my question is, privates were always prevalent along your timeline that you've seen, or have they become from the 70s to now so more and more prevalent as the years have increased, right? Could that shrink the...
Yeah, no, I think that has always been an issue. Now, charter schools is what's the difference, I think, since the 70s or something. But private schools, there are more now, but then there are a lot more people now as well. So I think that idea, and if you're a star athlete, you might well wind up there. Although Oak Grove High School had 30 years of terrific football teams, and so it's possible. And at Independence, we had great facilities for swimmers and
I couldn't agree more.
And wrestling.
Yep, and that was the athletics probably wasn't the best example because and anyone who's true to themselves in their hometown, they'll always stay, right? And they want to represent their own place on the map. But in terms of education, I've heard it being whispered around that there's always some type of, obviously you're not affiliated with them anymore, but what is the state of, I see a concern with the state of budget for East Indian High School District, and they continuing to be reduced. One thing that's been kind of going viral on Facebook is, gosh, it always comes back to politics. I'm trying to stay away from politics. It always comes back to about, I've had a teacher on here who's saying that he's coming out of pocket for school supplies and stuff like that, and there's concerns that, budgets are shrinking. Do you think that's more due to the power decision makers at B, or because the competition of private schools, because they're a business? Let's not they're a bit. Let's be real here.
Right.
Do you foresee if that does become a problem that maybe they have to not allow having as many charter schools? Because what is the regulation behind a private school? Do you know? It's whatever they want to do, really, right?
Well, you have to go through a process. You have to, if you're the charter operator, you have to complete a set of forms showing what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, what it's going to cost. And then it's sort of evaluated at the local level, at a local school district, and they can approve it or deny it. And if they deny it, you can go to the county and plead your case, and you can even go to the state. So there are some things in between. Mostly public school districts aren't in favor of a lot of charters, partly for the reason you say.
Right.
Pretty soon it starts to erode the budget. But I think the current budget issue has a little bit more to do with, after the Great Recession and recovery from that, then finally there was more money, and so there were a couple of years when the state was sort of making it up to school districts and pumping money back in where there hadn't been money before. And so school districts started reinstating programs, but those were sort of one-time monies, actually maybe two-time monies. And so then those two-time monies are gone, and now there's more money than there was before, but not at the same level as after. And so now school districts are having to adjust to
and recalibrate,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
To that. So they're coming in more lump sums. Very, very interesting. And I wonder where that's going to go. Do these privates, are you aware if there's any regulation that they're probably audited as well? Their numbers of the private schools are looked at, their budget and so forth.
But the state doesn't pay money to the private schools, so
right, so they can kind of
they have their own boards that do that.
That audit.
It's not public information; those are private.
Interesting. And I'm all for that. I mean, you're a private institution and you're doing it well. That's great, but at the same time, there's some level of you also have to look out for your fellow man who cannot afford the private school. And I'm just curious where we're at. That's not shrinking as much. Obviously, from what I learned from you a second ago, it's not because of that. It's far more because of the economies of scale, the way things are going. California's a huge state, the way we can distribute it according to Financial Times and so forth. But we're going to go right into the rapid fire. Can you believe an hour and 1 minute? Can you believe that already? But as far as value, I'm so happy right now. I think we just laid down some very cool stuff. So I want to pick this gentleman's brain is because he's done so much and taken zero credit and behind the scenes and spent his entire life, over 35 years, obviously he just explained that it wasn't just him, it took a lot of help, but having the mind to delegate that and put the right people in charge of such an important job is very cool. So I want to say thank you for that. In case anybody's ever seen it, but this is the fun part. I do a little, I call it rapid fire, but you can take your time to answer. I pulled out a bunch. So my first one, Mr. Welch, tell me about a failure or what you thought at the time was a failure in your life that ended up kind of, not until you could look back to say, oh man, that was meant to happen. It kind of set me on my way, or any failure, you thought was failure time and ended up being success. I always throw the easy ones at you.
Sure. Sure. I guess, many failures, and each time you learn, and many successes as well. In some ways, for me, Evergreen Valley High School, even though I love it and I love doing it, it was a failure because the vision is no longer there. And for me, the vision was important. I've gone on to use that in other places. For example, in the Santa Clara Unified School District, the 49ers STEM Leadership Institute exists. And it's very much, I worked closely in developing that. It's very much like what we tried to do at Evergreen, and I could take that experience. I guess in the final analysis, what I think about that is the issue is to try, to engage, to do things. And sometimes they're going to work perfect.
You only learn when you make mistakes.
Yeah. Sometimes they're going to work perfect, very seldom. And sometimes they're going to be difficult and you're going to have to dig your way out of them. And sometimes there's someplace in between. Just keep doing it, and keep trying it again and trying it again.
Yep, it's a part of nature there. The baby only learns to walk or stand after it falls on its face about 20 times and then it stands up. I love it. And this one, just a personal opinion, when you think of the word successful, still loaded word, who's the first person that comes to mind? There's no right answer for this. It's just in your opinion and why.
You know, I was
Throw me a name I don't even know.
I was a history teacher, and so one person that comes to mind who didn't get a lot of credit is Harry Truman. He had great success. He was a humble guy who did the right thing, who thought hard, wasn't worried about what everybody was going to say, just stuck with his conviction, put on the front of his desk, the buck stops here. Here he's a successful guy, a hero. My daughter, who's teacher of the year in her school district, and who's a parent of a disabled child, and who's a pastor in her church. For
Shout out to her. What district is that, Mr. Welch?
She's in the Union School District.
Union School District.
She's a hero. She manages an incredible amount in her life and does it gracefully and successfully.
That was beautiful. President Truman. Yeah, I mean, the greatest always look back that you can't always worry about. We're all self-conscious to some point, but you can't. I stopped a long time ago caring what people think, because I remember hearing a quote that I know the quickest way to failure is caring about what everybody thinks. I don't know the key to success, but I know the key to failure, and that's trying to please everybody.
Right.
That's exactly what it was.
Well, I got one other success story.
Yeah, please.
Mr. Cotto, my former
Joe
boss. Cotto. He is an amazing person.
I gotta meet him sometime.
About success, about working with people and having people follow him and believe in him. Everybody can't do that, and I'm not sure quite how he does it, but he can walk into. I remember when the East Side, subsequent to his,
what do you call that? Charisma? What do you call
charisma.
That? Yeah.
But it's even more than charisma. Charisma. People who wow you. But people would say that guy. He is a wonderful person, and he remembers your kids' names. And I don't know. One time when there was a terrible issue, I don't know what the issue was at the East Side, and the boardroom was filled with angry people, and the next day in the paper it said, well, the former superintendent would have opened up one of the gym and served cookies and punch, and by the end of the evening everyone would be happy. And so that he is that kind of guy. He's still doing that.
Right. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I think it's more a skill where it doesn't mean he's the charisma and so forth, but it's literally knowing every single person is different, but somehow that person just finds a way to connect with each in their own different way, and having that sixth sense of how to do that. But awesome. And let's see. Let's get that question. Let's see. This is a good one. What is a book that you most often given as a gift? You obviously you don't have to go too far into why, because the person's going to have to be a spoiler. That person's got to read the book,
right?
If any.
It's that's an interesting question. A book I gave to someone recently was Al Franken's book, Giant of the Senate. Well, and it's a very inspiring book about Al Franken.
I've been watching him a lot lately.
And now, all of a sudden, Al Franken is not quite such a giant of the Senate. But that's interesting. One of my favorite books of all times is a book called Pillars of the Earth, which is a sort of a historical novel about sort of the early Middle Ages, and a wonderful book, and I loved reading it and thinking about it. Until I read that book, it didn't occur to me that unless you were rich or royal or something in those times, when you went someplace, you had to walk. That was it. You had to walk, and so everything got planned out about how far you could walk in a day.
Right.
Great book.
Simple things, right?
Yeah.
Pillars of the Earth. And then the Giant of the Senate, Al Franken. Awesome. So this, when I say morning rituals now, I'm not talking about exercise, that same thing, just for simple reasons. First 60, we're creatures of habit, right? First 60 minutes, you wake up. What do you typically, every day is not the same. What's your typical routine?
I have one. It doesn't work every day, of course.
Never.
But this is how it works at our house. Our kids are grown up and gone and have their own
Yeah.
families now. So I get up. My job is to make the coffee.
Mm.
Then I go out and get the paper. Now, none of my kids even take a paper anymore.
Right.
We take a real paper and 2 on Sunday. And so I bring the paper and the coffee into the bedroom, wake my wife up, and we read the paper together, talk about what's in the news, often get mad about what's in the news.
That's one of the reasons. No, I mean, slightly different time. And first of all, you reading anything that's not a screen and that being the first thing is probably more mentally healthy than anything possible. My only fear to add to that is the reason you and Janet immediately get into a debate. This is just my opinion. Is my fear of what's really happened to KTVU, to the local things, and that's again watching Bowling for Columbine and so forth. Is I want you to try to count, Mr. Welch, tomorrow morning's paper on how many of the headlines had to do with some sort of fear. I'm not saying it's all the time. Obviously, that it's because of ratings and so forth. But I feel like it can really get taxing on the mind of my local parents. They get angry. I walk by and I turn it off every time because we're in a world now, and this is, you taught me so much, is when I made that switch like 3 to 4 years ago, and where I'm in charge of everything that goes in here. The paper was all you had during that time, but nowadays this is going to be downloaded into a podcast after YouTube. On your next drive to Walnut Creek, Pleasanton, you can listen to KTVU, or you can listen to Roman and Mike Welch talk about the education system in Eastside Union. And I feel like since I've done that, those hours fly, and it gives you such a depth of educational and no knock to you, sir. All I'm saying is suggesting that there's a whole universe of things out there as technology is changing, right? Which is you've encouraged for so many youth as well, that I've personally told myself, sadly, no more local TV news, and paper's still fine depending on what it is. Evergreen Time or Mercury?
Mercury.
Okay, well, yeah, that's debate. So that's why you and Janet get into it about. But I might be wrong. In tomorrow's paper, I'm going to text Mr. Welch. If there's a positive ad somewhere, or positive story, excuse me, Roman was wrong. And I'll be the first one to admit that I was wrong. But do you agree on some level? H1N1, killer bees. This person, it's 5 a.m. They're talking about somebody who got stabbed or killed. But at the same time, in my opinion, we're at the safest time in history alive. Think of it. When it was the Wild Wild West, people would pay for their tab, shoot the other guy, and take off on their horse, right? If you look at a grand scheme of things, please disagree with me if you disagree that we are safe. But all of our attention goes to the one fatality that happened here, when given, yes, we should be looking at that, but there's so many positive things. How are you about that aura of how positivity versus negativity affects the mind? Does that ever cross your mind?
Of course it does. Okay. Of course it does.
So you have examined that realm.
Yeah, well. And I agree about KTVU. I don't want to watch it at night because it's just one right after another of those terrible things. But
that was wrong. I mean, KTVU and San Jose Mercury, a little different credibility.
Right.
That's like the Inquirer, and
right.
But sorry for that rant. But I just felt for whoever's listening that anyone, if it was my mother's age or so forth, I would just highly encourage you, if there's something you like. It's like Pillars of the Earth. Just go on YouTube and see if there's somebody talking about subjects that, if it's cooking, that you could completely learn out. Education's the topic here, so I couldn't help myself but to imagine that. How rude of me, though. I blab after the Mercury with Janet. Then it's off to the day. That's the morning ritual.
Then it's talk over the day.
That's like the first 60 minutes.
Like, who's going to make dinner tonight?
Yeah.
Like that.
Okay, I got to learn from you. I've been married a year. I got a lot to learn
from
him. How long have you and Janet been married?
51 years.
Man, 51. Yeah. That's awesome. And the question was your morning ritual for 60 minutes a day, and you asked that. We'll wrap it up with this last one here. I gave you, we'll add 2 more. I gave you 24 hours, Mike Welch. You probably been in these situations a lot, but you have to give a TED talk tomorrow, Mike. You don't have, Mr. Welch, you don't have much time to prepare. Obviously, you're going to go with the go-to subject that you could talk about all day from 35 years of your career. Or I could be wrong. It could be a Pillars of the Earth. What would you pick for your TED Talk?
Maybe we like to travel, and so I might pick travel. And what would I talk about in travel? It's not just visiting the Taj Mahal or the pyramids. It's visiting other cultures and seeing and living with and understanding how other people live day to day, how they see the world, how we see the world, and sort of learning from that. And it's a sort of, I think, what everybody needs to do. If you can't travel, you can do it in a lot of ways, but to sort of
educate and be empathetic to other cultures.
Right. So, as you just said, the world can be sort of filled with hate and mistrust and dislike and all of that. Or you could try to reach out and understand who are you? Help me understand how you think that way. And you can do that. Some people, I think, they just pay lip service to it, and I'm not sure they really want to.
Make the effort.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's what my TED Talk, and I would tell some stories about, visiting a house in China and what I felt about that.
I love it. You can pull up the slideshows, and then when Australia comes up, you can simply say, "This is Australia," or you can say, from your knowledge, of course, actually in Australia they do this. That'll blow people's mind.
Right.
I love it. I love it. You just smash these. I thought these were going to be tough questions. We'll leave it with the last one here. Dang it. Okay, two more. After this one, start with your favorite quote. I'm such a quote nerd. That would be a tough question for me, but you had to narrow down one. I got mine.
Well, this is my own quote. It gets me in trouble sometimes. But,
no, I really want it.
Yeah. There's two kinds of people in the world. Those who say yes and those who say no. Those who say yes are better.
I love it. And I remember, shout out to Sean, I changed my way of thinking. I started reading something that, the greatest CEOs say no to a lot of things all day. I don't know why I just randomly chose today, but one of my good friends, Shannon, was like, she said it respectfully, I disagree. I'm more about saying yes and going with the flow of it. And I was in that mindset first. Then I came to that, no, I got to be stern CEO, right, for my parents. And then obviously hindsight's 2020, and I completely agreed with her. And I reached out to her and I said, you know what? She's like, how do you remember that? It was 6 years ago. I was just saying, but it's very important to say yes.
And you want to say no. Then the next question is, how can I reframe this? How can I make this a yes?
Right. And what am I really saying no to, right? And reassess yourself.
And sometimes it's you're saying no to putting yourself out there, to participating, to engaging. And that's where I want you to engage.
Yes. I've said that too. There's so many things we say no to because we're thinking we're being focused on the goal. I said that yesterday, but really sometimes that shiny object in our peripheral is actually there for us, and we miss out on those opportunities if we set goals. Are so important. You add up goals and have them written down and so forth. That's the first thing I've kind of been open to change my mind about. Is sometimes that person asked you that little thing for a reason. Just go to that event, right? Just go to those. You get what I'm saying? Kind of. And even though sometimes being completely laser focused is the greatest. Okay, now I promise this will be my last advice to. Only because it's Mr. Wells. Advice to probably my favorite question. Back to the time machine. You can hop in. You get to whisper something at the 25, 30-year-old asked this to Mrs. Serena yesterday. Mike Welch. You get to hop in a time machine. You get to say something to him, and you hop back in, and you're out of here. Right? What would you give him? What would you say to him?
Shoot, I could say a lot of things. I guess one of the things I would say about sort of your life is, when your grandfather or my father was lived here, you went to work for the railroad and you worked for 25 years and they gave you a gold watch and you retired and you moved out on the farm. It's not like that anymore. Mm-hmm. And so a career isn't something out there, it's something in here. And so your whole life, You have to keep reinventing yourself for the next job, for the next challenge, for the next, this didn't happen in schools before. We talk about creating new meaning. What the heck does that mean? Create new meaning. Well, Elon Musk has made a career out of creating new meaning. And so then I would say, look at your skills, look at your knowledge, look at where you want to go. Constantly keep working at developing yourself, because that's the career. And so when the next thing comes along, or when you actually invent the next thing, you're ready to do that.
And don't just create a new business. The word you just used, like Elon, create the next best thing that can create its own universe underneath itself, right? I don't think anybody's going to top that. This is episode 86. I don't think anybody's going to top that. This is Mike Welch. I'm Roman Nahal. I want to say thank you guys so much. I'm not even going to say I hope this brings you value. I know that it brings you value, so I wanted to have this gentleman on, somebody I look up to as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Can't wait to chop this one up. And happy holidays, guys. Be safe out there, and we'll have this up soon on YouTube. Take care.